Chapter 6. It was more than 2 hours that they talked, so Nikki could surmise, interpret, and understand the celestial nature of Stefan's existence. She explained that she did not need to know the exact time he was born, because that could be discerned by knowing the general times when other specific events in his life and development did occur. For example, she said, I didn't know exactly what time of day I was born for years, but after paying attention to how old I was when I started menstruating, the first time I romantically kissed another person, and recalling where I was on my 20th birthday, I was able to figure out how old I would be when my mother died, and my calculations were correct. She passed 15 years ago, when I was 33. You don't look 48 years old, he said. Not being fully in this reality, the body doesn't have the same process of aging as it would if it housed all my energies. She said this seriously, and flashed a sultry smile that quickly hid behind her focus on the calculations for Stefan's information. After 2 more hours, he felt a boredom that brought on fatigue, and his lids drooped. Her smile returned, but it was caring, and he felt comfortable. All right, I have an understanding of where you're coming from, and I'm filling in the blanks with common sense guesses, she said. He widened his eyes and flexed his brow to wake himself up. What do you mean, common sense guesses? Oh, there are only so many possibilities pertaining to your celestial nature, and most of what's left to figure out is innocuous if it varies from your true information. I mean, it's not like you're a deity in human form, she giggled and stood up. So I'm going to extinguish the incense, and we are going to ease you into seeing the emanations. I can see them now, he said. She stopped moving and turned around to him. You can see them now? He nodded. Why are you not agitated by them? She asked. I think it's because I can see how you try to shield me from them, and that is a great comfort. He smiled, but his fatigue was evident. She cocked her head and squinted slightly with skepticism. You can see them? Yes, he said plainly. She walked closer to him. Then tell me, what color is the smoke behind me? He shifted his eyes and felt himself lose focus on reality as he knew it. The smoke, once a mild gray with subtle white, now wore a red hue. Red, he said, and there are shapes beside the column of smoke from the other incense. She looked over to it, mostly tiny crosses, and there's a circle, and now a small arrow. She looked back at him. You can see them, she said. Tell me, what do you see permeating from me? He looked at her and did not see her body, only a silhouette of her figure against a backdrop of pulsing energies flowing upward and downward and in upon themselves. As the energies crossed the lines of her outline, they took on specific colors. I see turquoise. His voice sounded strange to his ears. And a brilliant orange, so bright it would hurt, but... He trailed off. Beyond the orange is the rest of you. You keep those energies outside of this world, hidden behind the orange brilliance. Yes, she said softly, and then breathed in. He watched the orange shade brighten to extents that would have blinded others, but he did not look away. I can see beyond it. I can see the rest of you. What do you see? She asked. Her voice seemed distant. There's blue and a shimmering green bridging the gap to the other side, and then a deep and warm yellow. The yellow dissolves in on itself to a pink that darkens until it is red. Oh, that red, so sweet and tantalizing, alternating with the shadowy darkness of gray and black, giving way to red again, and those three churning against each other with a noiseless friction that blends them to a deep brown, an organic, living brown that reminds me of a tree more wise than the mountain it stands upon. And within that brown, a subtle glow that begins to overtake the shade, a sizzling purple, so deep violet that it becomes the darkness on which you take shape. Those energies form a gentle flowing and rocking like easy waves on the shoreline of some rarely visited ocean cove. Near the lagoon is a figure swaying in the light lapping of the surf, a body that aches with a longing for being and trembles with a fear of limitation. It inhales with every wave that washes over its naked torso, breasts floating on the surface, back arching to climb up the shoreline from the water. With every movement, shoulders grind over the grains of sand and come closer to the land. Breathing rhythmically, a reluctant enjoyment of the power that pulls her into reality, penetrating her limitless being with a limited and concerted instrument so familiar. His voice began sounding like his own. So familiar. The image he could see unfolded into the reality of he and Nikki in full sexual engagement at the center of the room. When? What? He stammered. She kept moving against him, her eyes closed, goading his body to continue. Keep going, she said. Almost there. Her cheeks became flushed, and her arms around his neck trembled. He moved against her thrusts with a rhythm he had never known. He looked across her beautiful body and felt his muscles begin to tighten. Open your eye, she said. My eyes are open, he replied. Not those, she said. The other one. The third eye. She was breathing heavily. He did not know what she meant, but immediately felt a burning in the small of his back that cut from one side of his body to the other, back to front, spiraling upwards through his chest. He looked at his own body, and his skin appeared to have a dark purple hue, the same violet he had seen before. He blinked his eyes as he felt his heart begin to race, and the color lifted off his skin, forming tight tendrils that extended upward and outward away from him. He looked at her writhing body and watched the colors behind her form into the confines of her body. Open it, please, my lord. I want to become, she cried out her plea. From the tendrils he felt the vibration and the words again, we are. And he heard his own voice with the vibrations. We are. We become. And we destroy. No, he said, not become now. Please, my love, she said, please. He felt a searing pain on his forehead so great that he was removed from himself to avoid it. He was in the room making love on the floor one moment, and in the next he was floating above himself. Refusing to let go, he drove himself back into the sensation of thrusting. He felt not of his body, but could hear the rolling of planets around some distant star. He felt the heat from her body, but also the burn from the center of the earth. He felt his own climax teetering closer, but found a vision of two walls holding immense rivers back from their flow. He could hear her voice raise in pitch, a moan of ecstasy building. He also heard an unearthly roar, a deep rumbling that rose into the thunderous chorus of what could have been 1,000,000 dying men offering their last guttural cry in unison against death. The pain above his eyes was unbearable. He felt the walls holding back the water shatter, and her body clenched as she inhaled severely. He was suddenly aware of only his naked body on the floor of this woman's house, this woman who lay under him with her eyes closed, breathing deeply through her mouth. He quickly stood up. "I need to go," he said abruptly, but she made no gesture to stop him. She did not even open her eyes. He found his clothing on the floor and quickly got dressed. Thoughts running through his mind of witchcraft, drugs, or prostitution, he walked out of the room thinking he heard her say "thank you" under her deep breaths. He got into the rented Jeep and drove off, heading west. About a half hour into his drive, right when he was listening to the radio newscasts regarding the suspected terrorist actions in the simultaneous structural failure of the Three Gorges Dam in China and the Boulder Dam just to his north in America, he thought about her. At that moment, she smiled. Lying on the floor, she heard no news, but knew the dams had collapsed when he had cried out. She knew precisely what had happened, and slowly she opened her eyes. Seeing no emanations in the room around her, she smiled. "I have become," she said. "I am here."